I didn't realize something was wrong with my family until I saw the same man in a bar thousands of miles from home. I'm 22 years old now. My family has lived in the same three-story house since I was very young, preschool age. It's in a quiet, clean suburban neighborhood, the kind where nothing ever seems out of place. There are only two windows in our house that matter to this story. One is in my bedroom on the second floor, facing the street. The other is in my dad's home office on the third floor, also facing the street. After what happened recently, I'm convinced someone has been circling my family for years. I don't know who they are, and I don't know why, but the pattern is impossible to ignore. The first incident happened when I was still in middle school. One weekend morning, I was heading downstairs when I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. My dad sounded tense. He kept saying that something had happened again. When I asked what they were talking about, they brushed me off. I didn't learn what he meant until days later when my older brother finally told me the truth. My dad is a lawyer and sometimes works late into the night. That night, he was in his office close to midnight when he noticed a large SUV moving down our street unusually slowly. Not rolling, crawling. A few minutes later, the same vehicle came back the opposite way. Then it parked directly across from our house. My dad watched it for several minutes. No doors opened, no lights came on, no one stepped out. Eventually, he went back to work, but he kept glancing out the window. Hours passed. When he finally fell asleep at his desk around 2 a.m., the car was still there. When he woke up around 5:30, it hadn't moved. It finally left just before sunrise. At the time, we told ourselves it was nothing. Maybe someone sleeping in their car. Maybe someone suspicious but harmless. Years later, when I was 15, it happened again. I was awake late in my room, wearing headphones and working on music. My desk faces my bedroom window, giving me a clear view of the street. That's when I noticed quick flashes of light outside. At first, I thought it was a reflection. Then I saw 3 cars moving slowly down the street. People inside them were shining flashlights directly at houses. When the beam swept toward my window, I dropped below the sill. Seconds later, the light passed across my ceiling. The cars continued down the street and disappeared. The next morning, my parents believed me. We agreed it looked like someone casing houses. Security cameras went up shortly after. A few years later, something else happened. A landscaper working in our backyard found a tiny hidden camera tucked into a bush near the fence. It wasn't recording anymore, but it had clearly been placed there on purpose. The idea that someone had installed it and then abandoned it made my stomach turn. The police were notified. Nothing came of it. Then our neighbors moved. The house next door sat empty for only a few weeks before a young couple moved in. No kids, big house, strange hours. I started noticing them standing at their upstairs window late at night, watching our yard. One evening, while walking my dog, I saw them sitting at their kitchen table with a third man. He was bald, muscular, with thick eyebrows. His face stuck with me. As soon as they noticed me looking, the curtains were pulled shut. Years passed. Last week, my family traveled to Paris. One night in a small bar, I saw him again. The same man. Different country, same face. We locked eyes. He stood up without finishing his drink and walked out. A few days later, I saw him again, this time photographing near us in broad daylight. That's when I told my parents everything. I don't know what they want, but if he could find us there, I don't think distance ever mattered. I live close to a national forest, and I've been hiking those trails for years. I know them well enough that getting lost has never really worried me, even at night. That evening, I'd received some bad news earlier in the day, the kind that doesn't let you sit still. Around 8 p.m., I grabbed my gear and headed out, not planning anything intense, just enough movement to clear my head. Night hikes weren't unusual for me. They're usually quiet and calming, but that night, the fog rolled in far thicker than expected. Visibility dropped to maybe 15 or 20 feet, My flashlight only made it worse, reflecting straight back at me. About an hour in, I noticed a smell. At first it was faint, almost sweet, like perfume, completely out of place in the forest. I stopped walking, trying to understand it, but before I could, the scent disappeared. 10 minutes later, I smelled smoke, campfire smoke. That made more sense. Someone could have been camping nearby, but again, the smell vanished almost as quickly as it came. Then came the third smell. It was earthy and herbal, deeply familiar, but I couldn't place it. That was the moment my unease turned into something heavier. I should have turned around then. Instead, I kept going. Not long after, I noticed a flashlight beam moving along a ridge to my left, far above the trail. That ridge has no marked paths and no safe access points. I know because I've checked maps before. The light would turn on, sweep across part of the ridge, then disappear, only to reappear somewhere else seconds later. Then I heard whistling. I turned my music off and realized how exposed I'd been the entire time. I pushed forward to a small overlook I knew was nearby, planning to stop and think. But when I got there, I froze. Sitting on a flat rock near the edge was a small stone arrangement. Careful, deliberate. I turned around immediately. That's when I heard footsteps running toward me. They were fast, heavy, human. They stopped just a few feet away. I stood there staring into the fog, waiting for someone to appear, but nothing did. After several long seconds, I started walking back down the trail. Every few minutes, I swore I heard footsteps matching mine. Then, something crashed through the bushes behind me. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car, hearing movement chasing me the entire way. Whatever followed me that night didn't need to catch me. It already knew I was there. This happened almost 20 years ago when I was 15. My parents were in the middle of a brutal divorce, and my mom decided it would be best if I spent a few weeks with my great-aunt Lucy in rural Vermont. Aunt Lucy lived in a massive Victorian house that had been converted into apartments decades earlier. She owned the whole building. The upper floors were rentals. She lived alone on the first floor. From the start, something felt off. Despite having a beautiful master bedroom, Aunt Lucy slept in a small den. When I asked why, she said the main bedroom got too much morning light. When I jokingly asked if I could sleep there instead, she shot me a look that ended the conversation. At night, I heard footsteps coming from the apartment directly above us. Slow, methodical, back and forth. I assumed it was a tenant until Aunt Lucy told me the second floor had been vacant for over a month. When I asked to see it, she reluctantly agreed. The apartment was empty, but the hardwood floors told a different story. Fresh scuff marks traced a clear walking path from one end of the unit to the other. She dismissed it. That night, while we watched a movie together, the footsteps started again. Aunt Lucy turned the volume up and acted like nothing was happening. The next day, I told my mom. She already knew. She told me never to mention it again. Near the end of my stay, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw faint light moving upstairs through the stairwell door. I left soon after. Years later, I learned someone had died in that apartment under unclear circumstances around the time Aunt Lucy inherited the building. I don't believe in ghosts, but whatever happened in that house mattered less than the fact that the adults I trusted chose silence instead. And that's the part I've never been able to forget.